Boom, surprise, everybody. It's me, it's Spider doing the thing. You will notice that here I am talking at you by myself. And yes, I am. And that's how the show is going to go tonight. Rob had a previous engagement for this evening. I know last week we had the thing, whatever it was, happened. And then this week he's busy with stuff, but we didn't want to cut off a show a couple weeks in a row. So here I am. And this is something that I'd been kind of wanting to do for a little while. And I know it's been on a lot of people's minds. It's been big news for a little while, for a couple of months now, actually. And we just hadn't got around to it yet. But tonight we're gonna hit it. We're gonna hit it real hard. And yeah. So how are you doing? It's an okay day here in Ohio. It's kind of cooler outside. Um, we had a bunch of like nasty weather last night. There was a tornado siren and all kinds of other stuff, and nothing actually happened from it. It was all good, but still. So today is easier. Today, not so much is going on, so that's good. I've been running around ragged because I have all kinds of things going on all the time here in my house. As you can see, I'm freshly trimmed and cleaned up a little bit and ready to hit the summer hard. Yes. So let's get right down to it. I know James is excited in the chat room already. Anyone else who's watching, by all means, join in. UFO whistleblower stuff that's been going on lately. It's been big. Hey, Z-Man, how's it going? Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. We Coast, good to see you as well. Giving me a Ric Flair. Woo. The UFO whistleblowers hearings, they're happening very soon. Let me see when the actual date of that is. Next week. It's next week, actually. And they're supposed to have this big deal about the... And when you hear whistleblower these days, it's kind of iffy. It's not always something that's like, okay, yeah, it's something to take real serious. Because sometimes there's been a lot of people saying, oh, I got this information. That's happened many times over the decades. It's not new. You get people who are like, oh, yeah, I'm a whistleblower for whatever, and I saw all this, and then it turns out to be nothing. And I don't want to start any fights or take any political sides. But I just want to mention that one of the big things over the last, 10 years or so that was a big whistleblower thing was the supposed Trump dossier that had these all details about his personal life, and that ended up being not true. And the whistleblower guy was just like, whatever, yeah, we made it up. I mean, he didn't say that. He never said that, but that's what came out after the fact. So, and I'm not saying that as a defense of anybody or as a pro towards anybody. I'm not political. I'm not for or against any of these people. Using that as an example, purely. If that's your candidate, that's great. If that is not your candidate, that's great too. Please don't yell at me. I'm not being defensive about it. Just making sure my position is clear here. Okay. And yeah, James brings up a good point. That's another thing that happens that has been super common, especially recently. There's been endless hearings about things. There's been meetings and hearings and memos and counter memos and all these things over these issues, both big and small, and then nothing really happens. And a lot of times this is mostly from actual political stuff. But then you throw in something like this that's, I don't know, whenever they tackle something like this, like UFOs or cryptids or whatever, whenever they tackle something that's not clear cut, that's going to affect somebody's lives on a personal level, on a mass scale. I mean, yeah, an alien invasion, that could really affect everybody, but theoretically, you know what I mean. They just, it's like throwing a bone. It's just like, here's some lip service. We'll talk about it a little bit. We'll make a big deal about it, and then in a year or two it'll go away and everybody will forget about it. Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about it. I especially the Congresses we've had over the last at least 10, 15 years, if not 20 years. I mean, I'm saying 10 to 15 because that's the time frame when I was the most paying attention to politics. And it's just like they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk and nothing gets done. And then some bill goes through that you knew was going to happen, and a bunch of compromises happen, and you already knew like everything that was going to happen, and they just endlessly talk and complain about it. And it's like, whatever. I'm kind of used to the government of the United States not really doing anything, and like putting out a bill that like says, oh yeah, we're doing something, and it ends up not doing anything, either because it gets repealed the very next year or because it had nothing to it to begin with. So here we go with something that again isn't something that a lot of people even believe in, the UFO phenomena, which a lot of us, we think there's things going on out there. There's things in the skies, there's things in space, there's things we've seen, and we want to know what they are. And we're supposed to have one of the best militaries on the planet. We're supposed to have the best intelligence gathering on the planet. We're supposed to have all this great tech and all this stuff. So why can't we prove one way or another what's going on? Either the easiest answer for me is they're incompetent, which, this is the U.S. government for you, or two, they don't want you to know, which is conspiracy territory, which may be true, maybe it won't. I'm not going to discount it. Or there's really nothing there, and they just want to string it along just to keep people interested in something, which again is kind of mildly conspiracy theory-esque, but not, or there's something really, really going on that they don't understand and they don't know about, and because they don't know enough about it, they're trying to keep it like, oh yeah, it's no big deal, when it could potentially be huge for life as we know it. Now I pulled up my tablet here. Doesn't allow me to do the screen sharing like Rob does, or if it does, I haven't figured it out yet. He's a little bit more savvy about that kind of stuff than I am. I used to be a big computer guy. I used to be able to do all this stuff, and I'm not so good as I used to be. But so I can't show you these articles, but I can tell you about them. I looked at an article. This was from ABC News, and this was the guy who's in charge of the task force, the Pentagon task force. He's a scientist and military intelligence officer. He's leading the Pentagon's task force on unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP. That's the new in term. It's been like that maybe about 5 years or so. And he's Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. And he says that being caught off guard by intelligent or extraterrestrial technical supremacy remains a top concern as investigators analyze more than 800 cases of mysterious sightings reported by U.S. military personnel dating back decades. And he goes on to say that data and science, this is quote, has to guide where you go and we will follow the data, unquote. And the total name of his office is the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. And that's a bunch of just like, what does that all mean? So it's another one of those big buzzword things that they assign to things. Congress established the office last year, so just in 22, when, we've had things like Project Blue Book, we've had SETI, which is independent of the government. It's the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. We've had all these other different programs all around, and they just established last year this special office because things were starting to be seen. And he says Let's see. Oh, here's the purpose. The purpose of the office, according to Congress and federal agencies, is to, quote, detect, identify, and attribute mysterious objects of interest in the air, in outer space, and underwater. Because once again, we know that there's been underwater unidentified objects, with special focus on mitigating potential threats to military operations and national security, which tells you a lot. They're 100%, as usual, focused on aggressors. We get a lot of people like there's the Star Child movement that says, hey, there's these beings from out in space, and they've all got this big confederation of friendly species, and they want to come and they want to invite us in, but we're too violent, and they want us to calm down. They want us to be peaceful, and once we're peaceful, we can all have universal peace and that kind of thing, which I'm not 100% on board for. I think the way that evolution works, there's a lot of survival of the fittest kind of stuff that happens out in the universe. I don't think it's just something here, because we see nature. We see predators and prey, the predator and prey relationship. Welcome, Sound Zeus. Oh, yeah, I'll mention that in a minute. Deadpool, your comment. And I think that violence is more common out in the universe than we give it credit for. I mean, there might be some species out there that want to be friends and have peace, but I think a lot more likely there's species that aren't going to like us, with good reason. I mean, sometimes we're pretty unlikable, right? Let's see. Deadpool had James Cameron held the record for water exploration depths, and I believe he did. If not, still does. I believe he did. He did because he's the director of the movie Titanic, which is it's not a movie I'm into. I understand the appeal. It's been out a number of years now. It's a romance and that kind of stuff, and it kind of distorts some facts. And he did a lot of research on Titanic, like went down in the subs and all this other kind of stuff. And so he had a record, not just for that, but for doing other things. He likes the ocean. He likes to go down there, and he's trained on submersibles and a lot of other things. So even if some of his movies, like I like some of his movies, and I dislike some other ones. But like I don't like Avatar. I'm not a big fan of Avatar, but this isn't really the forum to talk about that. Not today, anyway. But yeah, he's got some records. And so, back on topic here, Sean Kirkpatrick in this interview further goes on to say, we have to go through the rigor of taking each one, matching it against our known objects and catalogs, and then reviewing that, peer reviewing that, and making sure that everybody's in agreement, he said, of the process, which has included establishing a government-wide data collection initiative. And he says that the vast majority of cases reviewed since the office was established are readily explainable, which is probably mostly true. And he notes that final evidence-based determinations remain slow and ongoing. And that's the trick. The evidence is hard to get a hold of. If you take it from the skeptical point of view, then you'll want to see, oh yeah, nothing has ever visited here unless we've seen it, unless it gets recorded, unless this kind of stuff. And just seeing some lights in the sky doesn't count. That's the total skeptic idea. That's one extreme. The other extreme is the diehard, they have the bodies in Roswell, they've got everything, and we know, and they've reverse engineered and all this other kind of stuff, which could all be true, or it could not. I'm kind of skeptical on some of that stuff too. And Roswell and Area 51 are kind of obvious targets for this kind of thing. Area 51 and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, another, they're not close to each other, but similar things. They're both locations where classified material is stored, tested, developed, and when I mean classified, I mean like actually classified, not stuff that's going to leak out on WikiLeaks or something like that. And it's things where literally there's miles out from these bases where the fencing starts. So if you come up, like you can go to Area 51, you can go up to the fence, but they'll be there. They will be right there within like a few minutes. There will be a pickup truck filled with federal agents driving up to see what you're doing. If you're just filming, if you're just looking, if you're just, tourists being like, oh, yeah, I'm at Area 51. Hey, the aliens are in here. They'll just watch usually and they'll let you be. But if you make any attempt to get too close, they're right up there and they'll tell you, no, you got to leave. And there's big signs that say if you try to go over, then you can be shot. You can be shot and killed, basically, because it's a highly secure facility. Now, the thing about that is because of all the attention, sorry if you guys can hear the dog in the background. She's kind of asthmatic these days and she coughs. But the thing about that is I think because Area 51 is so high profile, I don't think they do as much there as we want to believe anymore. I think they probably figured with all the attention on it that they would let that be. And I think that they figured, oh, you know what? Let's have people keep believing we do everything here. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the sign. And they mean business. They 100% mean business. I'm going to talk about the event that happened a few years ago that was supposed to be. It didn't actually happen, but it was like a thing that we commented on some years ago, early on in the show. But I don't think they do as much because I think that what probably happened is when the popularity exploded and everybody's like Area 51, Area 51, they probably quietly moved away most of the really actual important assets. And it kind of just sits there. I bet there's not much there anymore, to be honest. That's just a personal thing. I think they perpetuate the myth to string people along with it. But they're still going to enforce that sign. I mean, it's still a secure facility one way or the other. You try to go over there, boom. That's a nice thought, Deadpool. That is a nice thought. I'll put that up there. She's very old. She's in the upper teens, probably almost like she's probably 17, 18 years old. So, she does her best. But back a few years ago, when they had that thing on, what was it, on Twitter or wherever, where it was Raid Area 51, and everybody was supposed to do the Naruto run and things like that. We talked about that on the show, and we warned people who were listening. We had a pretty sizable audience listening in at the time. We were like, don't do that. Don't actually do that. We didn't really expect anyone to actually do it. But if people were going to, we wanted to be like, no, don't actually do that. Because if they see a bunch of people charging there, they will open fire. It's not a joke. It's not funny. What was kind of funny was at the time, the documentary crew from Small Town Monsters, who you may know, we've talked about some of their things on the show here. They were filming for their documentary on the trail of UFOs. And the day that blew up on Twitter, they were on the road within a few miles of Area 51 right then. And they were like, because they noticed it blowing up on Twitter, they're like, oh no, like this is going on. Federal government obviously sees that going on, and we're driving there. They're going to be watching for people. Like, are we going to be safe there? Are we going to be okay? Are we going to be arrested? I mean, nothing happened to them, but they did get told, like somebody came up and said, you guys can't be here. You guys got to go. And, but it was an interesting coincidence. The documentary, the first set of that, Rob and I actually, a voice sample from that very show that we were talking about, ended up in that documentary. So if you guys see that, we're famous. Small Town Monsters on the trail of UFOs. So yeah, Area 51 and the UFOs and things. Speaking of Area 51, and a little bit of a tangent, I played way back on the early Xbox days, the first Xbox. I played a game called Area 51, where you were actually supposed to go there for whatever reason and then leave, but you ended up having to go down through all the levels. And it had David Duchovny as like the voice of one of the characters. I don't know if it's the character that you play. He's the guy from the X Files. He's Mulder from the X Files, if anybody remembers. And you get down to the basement, and they're keeping like this big alien like leader down there, and he's half mutilated because he crashed in Roswell some while ago. But it's played by Marilyn Manson, which is kind of funny. Kind of funny. Anyway, tangent over. Um. So yeah. So lately, back on track here. Lately, there's been a lot of news about this thing coming up. Now, let me take a look here. This is from Fox News, of course, and take that for what you will. You know, I try to go across. I have a pretty dim view of CNN, Fox, MSNBC, NBC, ABC. You know, I have a pretty dim view of most of those things. But according to Fox, this story was from yesterday. It says lawmakers said they had an argument with a commanding officer at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida as they pushed for answers about UFOs. Representatives Tim Burchett from Tennessee, Anna Paulina Luna from Florida said their efforts to disclose records about UFOs, or what the government calls unidentified anomalous phenomenon, again, UAP, have been met with resistance from the Pentagon and intelligence community. Of course it would be. Lawmakers will hear, the page is doing weird things, we'll hear from former military service members David Grush, Ryan Graves, and David Fravor during the House's National Security Subcommittee meeting next Wednesday. There you go. That's the actual day, Wednesday. So that's, let me look up the date here. Wednesday. What day is Wednesday? That's the 26th of July, 2023. Wednesday. Back to what I was doing. Burchett says, the Pentagon and Washington bureaucrats have kept this information hidden for decades. This is a quote. And we're finally going to shed some light on it, Burchett said. We're bringing in credible witnesses who can provide public testimony because the American people deserve the truth. We're done with the cover-ups. And he says that. Goes on to say, Burchett and Luna described tense moments as they tried to get information from the military about UFOs, and they said the Pentagon and Air Force tried to impede their push for records. Quote, the status quo on the part of the U.S. government has been to leave the American people in the dark regarding information of UAPs, Luna said. They refused to answer questions posed by whistleblowers, avoiding the concerns of Americans and acknowledging that the possible threat UAPs pose to our national security as well as public safety is extremely unnecessary. Which is what you would expect as a canned Pentagon response, whether it was true or not. So you can decide from there if you want to get on the conspiracy train and decide that they're hiding something, and maybe they are. I'm not saying they're not, and I throw around conspiracy like it's a bad thing necessarily, but it isn't necessarily. I know I used that twice, necessarily, whatever. Grasping at grammar here. A lot of things that have once been labeled as conspiracy theories have ended up being true over the last few years, some of which dealt with, yeah, that's one of my favorites, swamp gas. A balloon, maybe I can kind of okay, because we had that Chinese weather balloon thing. And, you know, if you're really into conspiracy theories, maybe you're thinking, oh, well, yeah, it's the weather balloon, and they allowed that in only because they could say that, see, sometimes it's a weather balloon, dirt, 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 dirt. But, you know, I'm kind of, yeah, over the last few years, there's been some conspiracy theories that have ended up being true. Like the whole thing about billionaires running islands with forced prostitution and things. That ended up being true, and then that guy ended up strangely committing suicide in maximum security prison. Funny how that turned out. And the stuff about, and I don't want to get people upset, whatever, but some of the virus stuff that some people disagreed with and were labeled as, oh, it's conspiracy theories, ended up being true. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but there are conspiracy theories that are goofy, like the whole birds aren't real thing, and flat Earth, ugh, and Australia isn't real. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. You can easily disprove this stuff. You can go to places. You can go to Australia. You can go around the world. You can, Yeah, Deadpool. I'm not going to put your comment up only because, again, people get riled up somewhere, and I'm not trying to do that. But I see where you come from. And James, yeah, it's more and more the conspiracy people are winning out than they were before. Used to be when it was conspiracy theories, it was like, oh, well, JFK and this kind of stuff. It was stuff that you really couldn't prove, and you had to endlessly debate and search for things. And even when they released all those files a few years ago about the JFK thing, they didn't say anything. Like, another big reveal that was nothing. Now, with that being said, I want to kind of touch on something else. With all this whistleblower stuff, I'm taking it with a grain of salt, but I'm interested in what they have to say. I am interested. I would like to see what they have to say, if there's any actual, evidence they can produce, whatever. I doubt anything's going to come of it, but I would like to see it. Weirdly enough, in our radio community, in our video radio community, there's some of the bigger groups, some of the bigger shows and things are kind of like, nah, it's all BS, whatever. And they're just ignoring it, and they're not bringing people on to talk about it. And one of those is, of course, our buddies over at Night Dreams Talk Radio. And I don't want to talk like I'm talking bad about them. I don't want to go on here and like insult them, or like, this isn't a call out post or anything like that. But they've been going on a bit of a rant lately. Like, they've had 2 videos that they've posted to promote their own material, which is fine, do what you want. But they use like a fake voice, and they pretend like, I'm a whistleblower, I want to be on your show, and I know the aliens are here to probe us and things like that. And they're making fun of the whole thing. And I get it. I mean, there are people that come up with this stuff that are kind of on the goofy side, but mocking people and making fun of the entire thing and just dismissing it isn't helping you. It kind of makes you look bad, guys. I mean, if you don't want to have those people on your show, don't have those people on your show. I can put them on my show. They can be on my show all day, and they can say whatever they want. I don't have to agree with them. That's the great thing about this. You can have people on your show that you don't agree with. Let them have their piece, though. Let them have their piece. Like, I don't believe that there's lizard people, so to speak. I mean, there could be, I guess. But the individuals that they've used as an example for lizard people, the one that gets me the most is George W. They said George W., the president before Obama, that George W. from, the towers and everything, George W., they said he was a lizard person in disguise. That's the conspiracy community. I'm not talking about Night Dreams anymore. I'm talking about just the general conspiracy community. They said he was a lizard person. He was part of the Illuminati and things. And yeah, they were throwing shoes at him. But lizards, like snakes, usually are able to swallow their prey whole, or whatever food they have. They don't often have to chew, they just swallow it. It's all, perfectly fine. And George W. Bush choked on a pretzel. See, it seems like such a dumb counter argument, but a lizard wouldn't choke on a pretzel. A lizard wouldn't choke on a pretzel. I'm telling you, they wouldn't. So I don't think he's a lizard person. I really don't. Personal thoughts. If I'm wrong, and like in another few years he comes out and says, "Yes, I'm one of the lizard people. We're taking over the world," I guess that's mud in my face. But I don't think so. Choked on a pretzel. A lizard doesn't choke on a pretzel. It sounds funny, but scientifically and biologically, as I say that with a scotch in my hand. Now, getting back to the whistleblower thing, again, I don't have high expectations for all this. I'd love to hear what they have to say. Oh, see, Deadpool head making the tough calls there, poking the holes in my argument. But I'm interested in the whole whistleblower thing because there's been a lot of UFO stuff going on over the last few years. We had that big object that they showed in renderings. It's funny because they didn't know what it was. They just knew kind of a basic shape, and so they made these renderings of this big cigar-shaped asteroid, the Oumuamua. I still don't know how to say it. Oumuamua thing that passed through the solar system. They said for sure, they were like, "Oh yeah, it came from outside the solar system. It's not native to here," and it passed through. It didn't get caught in any of the orbits of anything coming in here, which is super interesting. Yeah, well, I don't know how to say that. Ohamama. I'm bad already with accents, so. But that's what it is. I'm going to put that up there. That's probably pretty close to what it was. But it passed through, and they don't know what it was, and that's interesting. And they're still kind of debating it, which is something nice. You still, once in a while, I think that's where they got the name from, because they saw it from they have an observatory in Hawaii on one of the smaller islands. And there's been a lot of controversy about that too. Here, I'll put James's up there too, because maybe that'll help people. And that might be it too. It might be something relatively simple, and I'm just butchering it for some silly reason, because whatever. But yeah, they saw it from an observatory, and there's been a controversy about that because people said, "Oh, it's a sacred mountain. You can't have an observatory up there." Blah blah blah. And they put it up there anyway. Whatever. But they're still kind of debating it. Like every few months, I see another article about it, and there's people who are 100% sure that it's related to extraterrestrials. There's a guy from Harvard. There's a professor from Harvard, and he's been getting slammed lately in the news, slamming, attacking his credibility, and oh, he's a crackpot, oh, he's this, and whatever. He's got no evidence. But I think it's interesting. And one more, just so everybody's clear. I think it's interesting, how much they're trying to discredit him. And when I say they, I don't want to come off like it's some shadowy faceless. It's they as in the greater public and the greater scientific community. And I haven't read all of what his evidence is yet. I've been kind of piecemealing through a lot of this stuff. I don't get near as much time to research a lot of this stuff than I used to, and I wish I did, because I'd love to really kind of have stacks and reams of just research material all around the house like I used to when I was younger. I did. I actually had stacks of notebooks and things from stuff I was researching when I did all my religious studies and spirituality and all that other kind of stuff. And I did studies on mythology and space at the same time. I was looking at spatial phenomena. I had stacks of things around the room. But I have a family now, and I can't have stacks of that. Now it's just stacks of my daughter's toys. Or cat beds and things. Anyway, or robots probably. Um, but yeah, I'd love to know more about that kind of stuff. And back when I was younger, when I was still in school, as a kid, we were really excited. We were really excited because at the time, Alien Autopsy had come out. It was a big thing, and we figured out it was fake pretty quick. Like we thought at first because they were playing it up like it's a big real thing that it was real. We were like, oh yeah, it's a real thing, and then we all stayed up and watch it, and it was nothing. But around the time, Mr. Bill Clinton was saying, because he hadn't been elected yet, but he was going to be. He was saying, "Oh yeah, when I'm elected president, I'm gonna go out there in Area 51 and I'm gonna find the aliens." And we were like, "Yes, he's gonna do it. We love it." And then nothing happened. Nothing happened. And then once again, not trying to start controversy or say for or against. But when Trump got in there, I thought, he's the kind of guy that would want to go out there and just see what's there. And if they tried to tell him, no, you can't do that, sir, he'd just be like, I'm the president. I can do what I want. Like he did everything else. I thought for sure he was going to go out there and like, let's see what's in Area 51, guys. And no, nothing. Let down again. Let down again. As every president from the time I was a child has done. Just let me down every time. So, yeah, he did. He did make Space Force, and it still exists. They never disbanded it. People made fun of it. People in the government were just like, we don't need that. It's a waste of money and all this other kind of stuff. But it's still there. And, that's also a good point, James. That's a possibility, too. He might have gone down there, looked at all the records, and just, who knows? I mean, I know the media makes him out to be a buffoon and all this other kind of stuff and hot-headed and all this other kind of stuff, but it's entirely possible that he's a lot smarter than they give him credit for. Yeah, he's in a lot of trouble right now. And again, I'm not defending him. Like, I didn't vote for him and things like that. I didn't vote for Biden either. I'll say that. I don't want people to think that I'm instantly taking sides. But he could know a lot more than we give him credit for, and the classified stuff that they're doing is nowhere near the stuff he actually keeps up here. I don't know. You don't know a person unless you're in their brain. You can only hear what they say and what they present to you. You don't actually know a person unless you are that person. That's how it is. That's how it is. I mean, people want to be like, oh yeah, I'm a psychologist and I know exactly all about whatever. And as far as mainstream media stuff, and even some of the other media stuff, like the alternatives are kind of bad too. Like I spend a lot of time trying to compare sources and things to try to find stuff that actually matches up. Because the mainstream stuff is sprinkled with adjectives and different things to try to get you to react to it. Like, here's a news story. Okay, I'm just making this up off the fly. Man shot in Alabama after altercation. Okay, here we go. Standard, whatever. The news you see now says that as black man shot in deadly shooting. There's two words in there. There's a descriptor, which is race, which makes you either sympathetic or not sympathetic, depending on where you're at. Again, I'm not, you can institute whatever skin color you want there. I'm just making a point. I'm not, And then deadly shooting. Maybe it was deadly. Maybe they died. But that's a word that's loaded. It's a loaded word. And then throughout the article, now you have loaded words, specifically mentioning people's racial status or people's gender status or people's, all these different things, their political status, all these different things. And it's meant to lead you by the nose so that you have an opinion about that news story. It's not so that you're informed about it. It's so that you develop an opinion about it. And that's, You know, that's what the news is now. It's ridiculous how much is reported that's opinion rather than fact, or it's fact buried in opinion. When you watch the news, when I was a kid and we watched the news, it was really kind of straight faced. Like, today, Senator blah, 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 blah said this at whatever function. And that was it. It was really boring. Like, the news was super boring as a kid. And it wasn't just because I was a kid, it's because they just, said, hey, no, this happened. That was it. This happened. Now, it's former President so-and-so used incendiary rhetoric at his opponent and did this and did that and blah, 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 blah. And it's, the newscasters are sprinkling in the adjectives. They're leading you by the nose. They want you to have an opinion, because if you have an opinion about it, and I'm not saying that it's bad to have an opinion. I have all kinds of opinions, clearly. I'm a very opinionated guy. I get myself in what many people would say is trouble. I don't think it's trouble, but people are angry at me about all kinds of things. I don't care. Whatever. Be angry. But they want you to have certain opinions that can be argued about. And that's the difference. It's not that you have an opinion, it's that you have a strong opinion that no compromises. I'm fired up about it now. And that's what it is. Yeah. And honestly, in the scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago. When I was a kid, going out to restaurants and going out to hospitals at the nurses' stations and having ashtrays and things up there for them to smoke at the wards and things. Ooh, not that long ago. Really, in the scheme of things. But tangents aside, back to the UFOs. Like, I feel like that's where it's gonna end up. After all the hearings, after all the testimony, after all this, unless a spacecraft shows up outside the building and broadcasts, hey, you know what, mother, beep, 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 we're here, I don't think anything's really going to make any difference. Like, people are going to believe what they want to believe. And they're fair to, they're free to. That's the great thing about it. You're free to believe whatever you want, as long as it's not bothering somebody else. Unfortunately, a lot of people's beliefs, they bother other people, not on purpose. Like, people forcibly are bothered by other people's beliefs these days to a level that's unseen. I don't talk too much about all the different things that I think about, other than, the Saturday show. I talk with you guys about that, but I don't go out and publicly say a lot of stuff, because people will be angry and offended and upset. And I'm not worried about offending people. I don't want to deal with the kickback and the feedback from that, because that's what's going to happen. It's just going to be a bunch of vitriol and all that kind of stuff. And this is a good point, because we know that this has been done before. We know, and that's not a conspiracy. We know that things have been done that way before. All the way back in World War II, when the Japanese attacked, which was a bad thing, of course. But after that, we set up those internment camps for Japanese Americans. They were people that lived here. They were people that had been here for who knows how long. They were citizens of the United States for the most part. Stuck them in camps. This whole thing with the border, like the southern border, we don't know what to do about it. People want to be like, oh yeah, come on in, just let everybody in. But we don't just have space for everybody. We don't have money for everybody. We don't have jobs for everybody. We got to figure out what to do with these people. We can't just let them all come in. It's not a thing about immigration, because then the counter argument is always, oh, we're built on immigrants, and we should let them in. And sure, but what are you going to do after that? they have to have opportunities. They have to have something to do when they get here. They can't just show up and then just drain on the system, because we have enough of our own people draining the system already. We have all kinds of social security fraud and all this stuff already going on for people who were already born and raised here. That system is already a problem. It's problematic. We can't just add thousands of more people to it without having a plan. That's why you have to let people in gradually to place them in where they can be productive. Not, I don't mean be productive like work for your living, work yourself to death. I mean become happy citizens and things, you know? And other countries do that. Other countries do that. They're like, oh yeah, you've got skills. We'll put you in a field where you can do these skills. Not a field like a literal, like a farmer's field. I mean like a job field. Like, oh, you know how to do this? We'll give you the fast track to that. Then you can provide for yourself. You're not, the government isn't providing for you forever. We don't know how to do that, apparently. Used to. That's how the United States got built. After all the stuff from the Revolutionary Civil War and everything, during the Industrial Age, when they had immigrants come over through Ellis Island and all that stuff, that's what they did. They helped place you with work. They helped place you with housing. They did all this stuff so that you could get on your feet and do it yourself. Yeah, and it's just like, and everybody always says, well, if we don't let them in, who's going to work your farms? Why is that an issue? Like, if that's where you want to put them, fine, but treat them fairly to do it. Don't just stick them there and expect them, oh yeah, well, we'll just give them some documents that expire in a year, and then they can just stay here and work the fields. And if they get kicked out, then the whole system breaks down, and then you're at fault. You know, it's short-sighted. And that's what it is. We have no long-term goals here in the United States. We have no long-term plans. Same with UFOs. Dialing back to the topic. We don't have wage slavery, basically. Yep. It's just another form. Enslaved to a new system. Back to the UFOs. We don't have a long-term plan for that. We have a short-term. We have all kinds of short-term plans. That's what the whistleblower thing is. We got all this stuff. It's short-term, but no long-term plans. No idea what we're going to do if we actually encounter a long-term extraterrestrial presence or occupation or just visit or anything. Like, what do people think? They're going to show up, we're going to talk to them, and then that's going to be it, and they're going to leave? You know, I mean, if we're friendly and if they're friendly, then that opens up to all kinds of societal things. Like, I've said this before. Man, I've got a hair like on my nose, just driving me nuts. Sorry about that. It looks like I'm like going on substances or something here. I'm not. But it reminds me of District 9, the movie, where this alien ship shows up in orbit, and it's full of like sick and dying extraterrestrials. Like, they're like destitute, and so we don't know what to do about it. I like it too. It's one of my favorite movies. So we give them a space here, but it's basically a ghetto. They're second-class citizens because, of course, that's what we would do. You know, welcome to Earth. You're not human? Oh, fine. Well, here, you can live here. And it turns out one of the ways that they reproduce is by, infecting other people with versions of themselves. Not on purpose. Like, they don't just go around and do it. Like, it's not like a locust thing. But that's how they do that. And so the one guy gets in a fight who's investigating like human rights abuses towards the aliens, and he's trying to help them, and he gets infected by a radical that's been pushed into a corner, and then he starts turning into one. And it could be that kind of a situation. Like, an alien species, we all assume that if they're able to get here across space, they must be super technologically advanced. Yeah, James. Yep, kind of very similar. And I've had this discussion with Rob, and I disagree with him on it because I think his opinion on it is that with like the Kardashev scale, that if they're able to get here, then they must be far more advanced. And I disagree with that. I think getting to space and going interstellar is within reach of us right now. I mean, we think we're pretty advanced, and maybe we are, but we're not Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, that level. But we can get to space, and I think we could do the long-term thing once we figure out either cryogenics or something like that. I think we could figure it out really quickly. And if another species has done that already, they're at our same level, basically. They're not more advanced. They're just out there, and maybe they're just able to travel different places, and they're setting up colonies, and that's about as advanced as they've gotten. And I think a lot of things could be like that out there. What happens if we encounter a species like that really isn't too much farther than us, but we expect them to be so much better? We expect their technology to be so great with medical and this and that, and so we abuse it, and it ends up that we're let down. I don't know. Is anything going to come out of the whistleblower stuff? Anything of substance? I don't know. I'm cynical. I doubt it. I'm not going to watch the hearings probably because chances are you're going to get a bunch of goofballs from the congressional side asking questions that don't matter, or that are silly, or that are just there to get news headlines or to get reelected, whatever, from both parties, from all parties. I'm not particular. So I'm probably not going to watch them, but I will read transcripts and I will read the stuff after the fact and kind of sift through it and see what's being reported that's actually good stuff and what's being reported just to get a rise out of me. And then maybe I'll come back and I'll address this again with everybody. Because I don't know. I'm not into sensationalist stuff. Like when they have those big criminal trials and things, and like when they had the James Comey testimony, the FBI guy testimony on Capitol Hill a few years back, and all this other stuff about between him and Trump, whatever. The newspapers, and I remember I took a screenshot of it. The online papers were billing it as the Super Bowl of Capitol Hill and American politics. I'm kind of like, once you get to that level, it's not about finding any sort of truth or any sort of testimony. It's about entertainment. And that's what the news is. It's entertainment to get you to feel a certain way. And so I think that's what any sort of televised hearings are going to be. I think they're just going to be entertainment. Now, the written transcripts, I'll try to look at those all day if they release them in a way that we can actually, look at everything that was said. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see what the so-called whistleblowers have to say. If anybody out there has had an experience, I want you on the show. I'll give you a link. You can jump on in, next week, week after, whatever. Come on in, talk UFOs with me. Tell me what happened. If you are a government whistleblower and you've got some credibility, by all means, come on the show. I'll talk to you. Night Dreams Talk Radio won't talk to you for whatever, they do over there, unfortunately, which is really sad because I like some of their content. I do. I don't think they're bad guys. We've had James Creechbaum on the show before. He likes to forget that he was on the show before, but he was here. We had a good time. We had a great discussion. So as much as he might try to forget that for whatever silly reason, I don't know. But I would love to have these people back on the show. I'd love to have some of these folks here. If you've tried to get on Night Dreams Talk Radio and they said no, come to my show. Come to my show. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you for an hour, 2 hours, whatever. I don't care. I don't even have to agree with you. I'm not going to argue with you on the air. That's not my style. But I'll talk to you. I'll listen. I'll pose some questions. We'll talk. We'll have a good time. So that's out there. Um, all right, we're down to the last few minutes of the show. I hope you guys had a good time. I know my shows on their own, they tend to go all kinds of places, like all far afield, because that's how my brain is. A lot of things are connected in my universe that may not be as concise as other folks. I know Rob likes to have his more in a presentation style, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I don't want to talk bad about it. Absolutely not. That's how we usually do things. I like to just free flow all over the place, which is usually why I'm the side person, because otherwise I'll just take the show in every direction. He's the one that keeps it on track, so it's important that he's usually here. Um, but yeah, I hope you guys had a good time. Hope you guys are interested in some of this stuff. If you have any other questions, concerns, whatnot, drop some more comments on this video after the fact. It'll be up on YouTube in perpetuity. It'll be on Rob's Twitch channel, and it'll be on the official Facebook group, which is This Uncanny Earth Official. Pardon me. And what do we got going on? Today is Friday, so tomorrow there's another episode of the Saturday Spiritualist. As usual, I don't know what I'm talking about yet. I've been kind of struggling at the end to try to pick out things, and I think that means it's probably rolling to a temporary stop at some point, because like I said, I didn't mean for it to go on forever. But I think I'm going to get into crystals, maybe, but I think I might have to interview somebody for that, because I know a few people who are more into crystals than I am, and I think I need some expert opinions in that area. So I might pre-record that and then put that up on another day. We'll see. So that's Saturday. There will be a show. I just don't know what it's going to be about just yet. Sunday is free and clear. Let's see. If I know Rob was talking about providing his own, like, not really counterpoint, but like more religious, like organized religious alternative to the spiritualist, which is great. I'd like to have both ends of the spectrum. You know, we've talked about it before, he and I, and I've been pushing him to kind of do that. Actually, I've been like, hey, do a show about it. People will watch it. He's been talking about maybe doing that on Thursdays, and if he does that, I'll be moving the Spirits Club to Sundays. So Sundays will be filled up. But until then, Sundays are still clear. Monday, episode 2 of season 2 of Let's Talk About This. If you missed the debut, I talked about peanut butter. I sure did. Peanut butter. And there's a lot of good stuff about it. I had a good time. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about Monday. Like, as per usual. That's just, I'll make a post about it. Tuesday is Twitch Tuesday on my Twitch channel, DMGRGN. Wednesday is free and clear. Thursday, currently, like I said, unless we switch things around. You got to catch up, man. There's so many good episodes. Season 1 had a good ending, and then season 2 is just, it's on a roll already with the peanut butter. They're all on Spotify, all on YouTube, wherever you want to watch them. iTunes, Apple, Google, everywhere. Thursday, right now, currently, is still an episode of the Spirits Club. Friday, another episode of This Uncanny Earth. Rob should be back, so we'll see what we're going to talk about. I'll probably get with him at some point during the week to talk about it. And, yeah. And as per usual, if you would like to be a guest on This Uncanny Earth, let us know, and we will find a place for you. All we have to do is send you a link. You get queued into the thing here. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to sign up for anything. You just click the link. It'll let you in here, and you're good to go. We will talk with you just like this. And if you don't like to have the camera on your face, or if you don't have one but you do have a microphone, that's fine, because you can do it without the camera. Let me see if it'll let me do it without messing up the whole thing. See? You can hear me, but you can't see me. See? So if you're camera shy, we can do that for you. All right? Perfectly fair. Perfectly fair. So Oh yeah, the canvas bags. Price is reduced. They're only $6K now. $6,000 a piece for a canvas bag, so that we can buy a bus to travel and go on tour. Just kidding. We're not going to do anything. there's a lot of jokes behind that. There's a lot of jokes. I'm over my time. I got to finish my scotch. So thank you for being here, and I will see you folks next time.